For today's review, we're straight back to fantasy books. A patron who goes by ASDFJKLSC has requested another Bobbin's Choice, and so I'm digging back into my library for another personal favorite. But I should specify, my favorite book in this trilogy is this one's sequel, but because it's part of a trilogy, I really should start with the first one. So, today's book is The Darkangel, written by Meredith Ann Pierce in 1982. About the author. Meredith Ann Pierce was born in Washington State in 1958. She moved around while she was growing up, and so she attended the University of Florida to get a bachelor's and a master's degree in liberal arts and creative writing. She got the latter in 1980, so it didn't take her long to write her first published book, that being The Darkangel. The sequel, A Gathering of Gargoyles, came out in 1985, and the third book, The Pearl of the Soul of the World, got published in 1990. All three parts of the Darkangel trilogy earned accolades as children's books, but Pierce is arguably more famous for the Firebringer trilogy, which she wrote concurrently in the late 80s and 90s. It's about a tribe of unicorns and their enemies, the Wyverns, with humans being minor characters at best. She also wrote a couple more books in the aughts, but her writing career has apparently tapered off from what I could find. Even her website seems pretty old. Mostly she seems to be content to live off the grid in southern Florida. As such, well, I guess we're done here. So, on to the story. First of all, I should explain what I said last week about this book. This all gets explained later, but I figure it wouldn't help with a summary for you guys to hear it all up front. Centuries ago, humans terraformed the moon and created a new environment, complete with small humanoids who are fully adapted to the climate and the gravity. However, a few less centuries ago, the humans all vanished, and without them to maintain the machines and keep the environment livable, the moon has been slowly dying. The story begins on the slopes of a mountain with two adolescent girls, Ariel and Yodwin. Ariel is a house slave of Yodwin's family, but she isn't treated too badly and is halfway between a servant and a friend of her mistress. They're up on the heights where the air is thin to gather nectar from a rare flower for a celebration, but even though they joke about the mythical Darkangel swooping in to kidnap one of them, well, that's exactly what happens. A beautiful but ice-blue boy with 3 pairs of jet-black wings grabs Yodwin and flies off with her. Ariel tries to chase them, but the thin air gets the better of her and she knocks herself unconscious on a rock. Ariel manages to get back to the village before the long and cold nightfall begins, bringing a long black feather back with her as proof of what happened. Still, Ariel quickly becomes unwelcome in her master's home because the mother blames her. And since Yodwin was the closest thing she had to a friend, Ariel decides to head back up to the summit once the 14-day-long night ends and brings a knife with her to slay the Darkangel. Many long hours pass, but the Darkangel returns, having expected that Yodwin's servant would be waiting for him. He chose Yodwin as his 13th bride, but he's abducting Ariel for another reason. Ariel tries to fight back, but she hesitates when she notices how beautiful he is, and that gives him the chance to steal her away. The two eventually land on a tower guarded by a group of gargoyles, stone-gray monsters that are both ugly and starving. As the Darkangel explains, the castle once belonged to a king, but his son died and then he fell ill, and when the Darkangel showed up, the queen evacuated her people to a far distant land. As for right now, the Darkangel needs a maid to care for his brides, all of whom have become shriveled and empty since the Darkangel sucked out their souls and drank their blood. He carries each of those souls in a lead vial on a chain around his neck, and he only needs one more to complete the set and become a full Darkangel. Still, he can't collect his last bride until just before his one night of sleep each year, and until then, his wives need tending. He's had other maids before, but they all either killed themselves or tried to run away. Now that always ends with the Darkangel chasing them down and killing them, since the gargoyles start screaming whenever they spot a maid fleeing. The Darkangel introduces Ariel to his Wraith wives, but they all look so similar that she can't tell which of them used to be her Eodwin. They're also so far gone that they can't remember who they are either. Ariel flees the room and ends up in the garden, searching for something to eat. She has no luck, but when her shadow covers a statue of a short person, the person comes to life. He calls himself a Dwarf, a creature of the underground who turns to stone when touched by the light of the sun. Ariel helps the man reach the shadow of a bush, and he then explains that he was the castle's old treasurer, and he explains that he's been helping the Darkangel's maids by bringing them food and letting them use a magic spindle to create thread from emotions. The last maid only felt pity and revulsion for the Wraith wives, and so the threads she spun and the gowns she made were heavy and gray. For Ariel, it starts the same way, but as she grows used to the Wraiths, she starts spinning patience and charity, which produce much lighter and brighter threads. She also starts feeding the poor gargoyles, and when the Darkangel notices, he decides not to kill her for entering the tower because she's interesting. None of the other maids had even dared to visit the tower before. Later on, Ariel discovers the Darkangel torturing a bat for fun, and she's horrified that he thinks it's amusing. To keep him from doing any more harm, she promises to tell him stories to keep him entertained. Eventually, this brings her around to a story told to her by a creepy older house slave named Durna. Once, Durna was a wet nurse for her chieftain's son, but one day the chieftain's wife and her train entered a barren desert and became trapped by a still lake full of poisoned water. Durna eventually trades the chieftain's son to the mistress of the waters in exchange for their freedom, and she lies about it to her mistress. The Wraith wives eventually start suggesting that Ariel find a way to kill the Darkangel and get back their souls, but there's still some little bit of good left in him, and Ariel insists there must be a way to save him before he becomes a full Darkangel, like his brothers. She asks the Dwarf for advice, and he gives her a prophecy, which in this setting is a formula for what can happen, rather than a foretelling of what will happen. Sometime later, the Darkangel starts being haunted by waking dreams, since, naturally, that last story of Ariel's was actually the story of both the Darkangel and the castle. The Darkangel is going crazy from the nightmares, and he wants to murder Ariel, so the Dwarf puts her on a swift boat and sends her off on an underground stream so that the gargoyles can't see her. From there, she must cross the plains and the desert to the spot where Oceanus, Earth, sits directly overhead. There she will find the Star Horse, and by his hoof the Darkangel will fall. When Ariel reaches the plains, the boat turns into a heron and flies off. The Darkangel manages to track her down by the time she reaches the desert, but then a lion shows up and fights him off. The lion is the Pendarlon, the guardian of the desert Pendar, and he explains that the heron alerted him to Ariel's coming. He takes her to the people of the desert, the Ma'ambai, to heal the wound the Darkangel inflicted, and during her stay with them, she learns how to wield their staff weapons and how to survive in the desert. When the Pendarlon returns, Ariel is a much more self-confident young woman, and during a Terran eclipse, the Star Horse appears and describes the Ancient Ones, the humans who created life on the moon. The Star Horse disappears as the eclipse ends, but one of his hooves, the immortal part of him, remains behind. This is what Ariel came for, and so she and the lion race back to the edge of the desert. They get attacked by evil jackals created by the Water Witch who transformed the Darkangel, but Ariel and the Pendarlon successfully fight them off. Ariel returns to the castle, and the Darkangel realizes that she's become beautiful during her time in the desert. He eventually decides to make her his 14th bride, which is convenient since it means that she can serve him a potion made from the Star Horse's hoof as a wedding toast. She also frees the gargoyles while he's out. When the Darkangel drinks the potion, he collapses, poisoned by the pure water, but not quite dead. Ariel hands out the vials with the souls to the 13 brides, and while this frees them, it does not bring them back to life. Finally, Ariel decides to free the Darkangel instead of kill him. The Water Witch covered his heart with lead, and so she uses the magic blade Adamant to cut open his chest, free his heart, and then put her own in its place. It's magical, just go with it. Of course, Ariel almost dies, but fortunately the Dwarf is present, and he melts the lead off the Darkangel's heart and puts that in Ariel's chest. The two then awaken, with the Darkangel returning to life as the Prince Irileth. Irileth remembers everything about his time with the witch and as a Darkangel, but now he remembers the lies and enchantments too, and he resolves to defeat her for everything she's done. And as he and Ariel head out to his mother's distant realm, the book ends. The analysis. First of all, I want to say something I like about the trilogy that you can't really appreciate from reading just the first book. Each book is a self-contained story, as opposed to the part of the story you get from The Name of the Wind, but at the same time, each book also manages to expand the setting over the last novel. In The Darkangel, we visit a total of 3 lands, but we see what's easily twice that in A Gathering of Gargoyles, since that whole book is Ariel's journey as she tracks down the gargoyles she freed. Then, in The Pearl of the Soul of the World, we meet the remaining Ancient Ones who still live on the moon, and we get a lot more detail on what they were like, why they created the inhabitants, and how the people of the moon can bring their world back to life, even if no human ever returns. As for this book in particular, we're once again seeing the protagonist grow up during the course of the story. Ariel already has a certain amount of determination when the book starts. She decided on her own to kill the Darkangel after all, but she lacks confidence in herself thanks to a lifetime of servitude, and as a servant in a large household, she also doesn't know how to take care of herself. But she gains both of these things during her time with the Mauve, and that's not all. She also becomes more compassionate as she takes care of the gargoyles and the wraithwives, and as she becomes more used to their ugly appearances, she starts to understand and care for who they are underneath. There's also some definite parallels to an abusive relationship between Ariel and the Darkangel. The Darkangel is entirely evil, performing cruel acts just for fun, just because he can and he's bored, and he either killed Ariel's predecessors himself, or only felt mild annoyance when they killed themselves. But Ariel is fixated on his beauty, and because of it, and her conditioning growing up, she finds it hard to disobey him. Even when he's raging through the castle, suffering from waking nightmares and looking to strangle Ariel, she almost goes to him when he calls out to her and pretends to be nice. That's why I like that Ariel doesn't just fix him with her love. She has to do a lot more than just love him to make him change. She has to leave him first, which she does with the help of a friend who reminds her that he only wants to hurt her, and the help of an authority figure who prevents the Darkangel from doing just that when he eventually catches up to her. She then goes on a journey and discovers what it's like to live on her own, without leaning on anyone else for support. And after that point, she doesn't take shit from anyone, especially not the Darkangel. And when Ariel finds a way to truly help him, it hurts him. Deeply hurts him, but she has to see it through to the end, both for his sake and the sake of all the women he harmed before her. I guess you could say then that the message of this book is that, yes, ladies, it is possible to fix him, but to do so, you first have to fix yourselves and not take any of the bullshit he ladles out, even if it sounds like love. Dependency is not the foundation of love, and you need to know how to stand on your own before you can help anyone else do the same. Thanks for joining me again for today's book review, and I hope I'll see you next time for an old-fashioned novel about bats, squirrels, and an apocalyptic war.